Hey, welcome back to the Life Coach Launchpad. My name's BJ, and I'm here every week talking to you about all the online business things that, as it turns out, need to happen in order to have a successful life coaching business. I'm a business coach. I love to help life coaches make more money, get more clients, have more fun, and to do what they love to do, what they're meant to do, and that's coaching. So, let's dive right in. I've received multiple questions about how I add captions to my videos, what microphone I use, and more about how I produce a podcast, edit it, release video to YouTube, and so on. Because there's a lot of things that go into it, and I've learned a lot along the way. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. While I am producing content to show you, a life coach, how I can help you from a business standpoint, but these are all tools and methods that you can use as a life coach to find life coaching clients. The content production process is the same for you, for me, and almost everyone who is trying to find leads on the internet. I'll include planning when to work on my podcast, researching the info that will go into the podcast episode, recording it, editing it, publishing it, writing the show notes page, and creating social posts. That's really soup to nuts. That's start to finish. The first thing you need to know is that I video record my podcast. I export the audio to go to the podcast, and the video goes to YouTube and social. This walkthrough will not be completely high level. I will tell you a few details about each program or tool so that I can explain why I chose it. I'll talk through the steps required to accomplish a task, but I won't go so far in depth as to where exactly each button is, that type of thing. That will change over time. I really run into that when I'm talking about Facebook ads. The interface changes over time, but the concepts are always the same. This is designed to be accessible just by listening to it on the podcast. If you do want to see what each of the tools looks like and what that interface looks like, you can go to YouTube or the show notes page. You can go to either of those from the show notes page, which is at bjbutler.com/2828. The first part of my process is planning when to do the work. If I don't plan when to do it, there's a good chance that it doesn't get done. So I keep track of all the work that I have to do on a recurring basis in an Excel spreadsheet that has Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday along the columns, and then the rows are time of day, every 15 or 30 minutes, and I have Tuesdays slated to do everything related to my podcast and content that goes out. So it gets done on Tuesday. Sometimes I finish the work on Wednesday, but definitely by the end of day Wednesday, that podcast is published, and I know that my newsletter gets sent out every week, Thursday at 6 a.m. I transfer what's in that spreadsheet into my calendar. I just use Apple Calendar, not fancy, but it is really effective. I use time blocking so that I actually have an event in my calendar that says research podcast. The next event is record podcast, and then edit podcast, and then write the show notes, write the newsletter, create the social posts. That is literally in my calendar. That is the plan. That's the difference between wishing that I was going to get this done and actually getting it done, which means creating the plan. That's the plan. It's in my calendar. The first step of actually producing the content is to research what I'm going to be talking about on the podcast. And this is the most manual part of the whole process. This is me sitting down in a Google Sheet, writing out either an outline or a script. Sometimes it's an outline, sometimes it's a script. Generally, if I write the script, then the editing of it goes faster. If I am just writing an outline, then I will take more time on the editing, both of which are fine. It's generally about a wash. So I kind of play around there, which is best for me. But I will take some time to do some Googling so that I'm actually using actual data to share with you. Throughout the week, I will just jot down some notes about what I want the podcast to be about. So the very first step of creating this research for the podcast is picking the topic. And so I'll go through my notes and figure out which one I want to talk about that week. And so I write it out. It's either a script or an outline. Next is to actually record the podcast. If it is a script, which is what it has been lately, not this episode is more of an outline, but if it is a script, I have this really cool trick that I will read from the script, and then there is a program. There's two programs I know of out there. Descript, could be Descript, I'm not sure, and also V.io, and they will fix your eye contact. They will make it look like you are looking right at the camera. So if you see a video of me and it looks like I'm looking at the camera, like right now, I am probably not actually looking at the camera. Right now, I am not looking at the camera, but it in post-production, which is after the recording, it will move my eyes to be looking at the camera. That is really amazing. Another point about recording my podcast is that I remind myself to smile. I it makes me have more fun. I think it makes me sound more dynamic, especially when I'm sharing on social. I am going back and looking for times that my face is more smiley, when I'm more animated and smiley. The microphone that I use is really nothing fancy. It is a Blue Yeti, which, if you Google best microphone for podcasting, this is always up there. And then there's always some people saying, why does everyone use this? It's terrible, but it works. It works very well, especially compared to using AirPods, using the microphone on the computer. I've got this other pair of over-the-ear headphones. It works better than that microphone. It works better than the microphone on the phone. It is great, and you can configure it to be different distances away from your mouth. I feel like when I have it set up to be farther away from my face than most people, but it means that the video is clear of me. It's not, it's in the video, but it's not front and center, and it is still clear. Probably the most exciting advancement in technology having to do with audio recording is the software that uses voice isolation. When I first started my podcast, so this is podcast 28, so basically 28 weeks ago, I erected this piece of styrofoam. I'm next to a window that is out on our front. Is like our house is 15 feet away from the street, so you can, and we're in the city, so you can hear street noises. I put this piece of styrofoam on there. I ordered on Amazon this soundproof styrofoam material to go on the styrofoam board, and it does block a lot of the sound. And I would take it down and put it up every time I needed it. Right around that time, or maybe I didn't notice it, there was a voice isolation that is built into my Mac. When I'm recording on QuickTime, it gives me an option to use voice isolation, and it totally omits the need to block out other sounds. You can hear, I mean, I can hear the HVAC going in the background. In winter, I'll have a heater going. Sometimes there's a fan in the background, and let's be honest, our 2-year-old is right above me with a babysitter, of course. I don't think you can hear her. It's quite amazing. I used to save my recording for after she would go down for a nap, but now I don't even do that anymore. I think when she makes a noise, maybe there's like a little bit of a scratch in my voice as it's isolating my voice, but you don't hear her. You don't hear her footsteps. It's quite amazing. Really, the barriers to entry to starting a podcast have come down really far. I don't mean to discount my my efforts here, but you should know that if you're thinking about starting a podcast, it is not that hard. There are lots of courses out there about how to start a podcast, and maybe it's worth you investing in one if you're considering starting a podcast, but you can do it. You can start a podcast. Okay, once it is recorded, I have recorded it as, I use QuickTime. It is a .mov file. It is a video, and I will edit it as a video. In terms of video editing, I use Final Cut Pro, which is like $300 out of the Apple App Store, which is more than most people need. But I really enjoy creating family travel videos when we go on trips. So I have it from a history of doing that. If you have Mac, just use iMovie. So when I'm editing my podcast, I will copy and paste the intro from a different episode. I will insert this video for this episode, And I will listen through the whole video, and as I hear the pauses between when I'm talking, because when I record this, I'm stopping. This one's an outline, so I'm stopping, I would guess, probably 50 times to think about my next sentence because that's just more comfortable for me. I feel like I can fly through it that way. But then, yeah, I need to go omit, delete the silence between the sentences. I can usually edit this 10 to 15-minute podcast in no more than 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Now, when I'm done editing the podcast, I will export it as a video, and then I will also export it as audio. The next step that I do is to write the newsletter. I do this because the content is on the front of my brain, and it's this content that's in the newsletter that feeds into show notes and social posts. This is the second most manual part of this whole process, except I do have a great help that everything that I wrote in either the outline or the script, some part of that will become the newsletter. So I scan that information, turn that into the newsletter. I do have to create a subject, make the first sentence or two slightly catchy, and then have a call to action at the end. There will be one last step that is adding a link to either the show notes or directly to the podcast, something like that, that I will come back to when I have that link. But for now, the newsletter is written. I actually write it directly into ConvertKit, which is my email marketing software. The next step is that I will publish the audio to Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is the host that I chose for my podcast. It is really cheap. It is like $12 a month. So again, the barrier to entry to creating a podcast is very low. The one bit of information that goes into the listing of this episode is there's a description. The description that I use is just a shortened version of the newsletter. And a lot of times I'll just publish it immediately and I move on. I will publish the video to YouTube and then I go write the show notes. The show notes, I will create a new post I use WordPress to make my site. So it's a new post. First, I'll embed a player from Buzzsprout so that people, when they're on the show notes page, they can play the episode directly from there. Basically, what's a summary of the episode is just a shortened version of the newsletter. Sometimes I'll include the YouTube video that's embedded on that page. I will always include quotes. And these quotes come from what I will talk about next when I create the social posts. These quotes are coming from, I use a tool called Descript. Descript is a video, it's a lot of things, but I use it for video editing and it has a lot of AI capabilities in it. So I will upload the video and then I will tell it to find 5 good quotes and I will use some of those quotes. It also spits out a full transcript. It has the transcript and it has each like word in text form related to where it is in the video, so you can edit by the words. When I find a quote that, oh, I'm getting ahead of myself here because it's super cool. I'll get back to how I use Descript. Right now, for the show notes page, I just take the quotes from that transcript. I have that AI tool tell me what quotes are best. Also on the show notes page, I'll have any pertinent links like a download. I will also include a link to schedule a free mini session. It's there on every show notes page. Once I have the URL for the show notes page, I will double back to my newsletter in ConvertKit and include that link as a link in my email newsletter. Or it'll be a link to directly to the podcast download, whatever makes sense. The last step of this process of creating my weekly content is I always create 2 social posts. And like I said, I use Descript. It is fantastic. Editing by text is much faster than editing video. I can change the dimensions of the video. I can add a background, which a lot of times I do. I'm not going to export different sizes for Instagram versus Facebook, for different placements within those platforms. So I usually just export a square or slightly more vertical, the 4:5 ratio. This is where I leverage my B- work skills. You can easily go down a rabbit hole of what is the ideal dimensions of different types of posts for different platforms. Just pick square or 4:5. or whichever is best for your content. Don't let that or any other minor decisions slow you down. So that quote that I use for the show notes, I will take the video of me saying that quote, and that's my social post. I will add captions in there. I have it a template saved into Descript that will automatically put the captions how I have it formatted into the video. It is super fast, it's fantastic. Writing the description that goes into the post is more manual though. It comes down to, I feel like I can sniff out AI written content. I know that when I have an expert completing work for me, I can always tell when copy is too strongly influenced by AI. But the words that I write are just bits and pieces of what I've already written. So I might tailor them to exactly what is in that video, or sometimes I'll use some personal photo or video. I do intersperse some personal pictures. I learn a lot from my kids, so they make it in there sometimes. I also find them entertaining, so I think maybe someone else would find them entertaining. Or I love to create family travel videos of our trips. You'll see one of those there for sure. It'll include a link to my family travel YouTube channel called Busy Finding Time. I post the Facebook and Instagram posts at the same time with one click of a button using the Facebook Business Suite. To get there, I literally Google Business Suite and it shows up. Honestly, I only type in a few letters and what I'm looking for pops up in Safari. From there, I'll schedule one to go out immediately and one in the future, usually the next day. I might glance at their recommended times of day when my followers are most active, but again, B minus work. I just pick a time during the day. I really don't see that much of a difference based on when I post. I do often use one of these posts as an ad for a week to run traffic to my podcast. But this is an advanced technique that I really don't recommend for everyone, so I'm not going to go into what all goes into that. And that's it. That is each step. I didn't screen share. I kind of thought I was going to, but I felt like I got my point across, so I am not screen sharing. I get all of this done in about 3 hours, which is either long or short depending on where you're coming from. When I produced my first episode, it took me pretty much all week, off and on, but all definitely parts of every 5 days of a week. And so now I have it down to three hours, which is I think is fantastic. If you're looking for help on how to do your content strategy, on how to make it easier, because right now my content production process feels pretty easy. If you want yours to be easy, I can help you with it. You can set up a free mini session at my website, bjbutler.com. And that's it for this week. I'll talk to you next week. See ya.